The landscape of mixed martial arts is undergoing a significant transformation. For years, the Ultimate Fighting Championship stood as the undisputed pinnacle of the sport. However, a new contender, the Professional Fighters League, is rapidly gaining ground, attracting top talent from its long-established rival. This shift is not merely anecdotal, it represents a fundamental reevaluation by fighters of their career paths. The reasons are complex, encompassing financial incentives, career structure, and personal autonomy. This movement is sending ripple effects throughout the entire MMA ecosystem. A growing number of prominent athletes have either left the UFC or opted against renewing their contracts, choosing instead to sign with the PFL. These moves highlight a clear trend across various fighter tiers. Shane Burgos, a respected featherweight, departed the UFC after his contract concluded. He openly cited a superior deal and enhanced opportunities as his primary motivations for joining the PFL. Mark Diakise, a lightweight veteran with a 7-year, 15-fight tenure in the UFC, requested his release. He subsequently signed with the PFL, describing the offer he received as exceptionally good. Perhaps the most impactful departure is that of Francis Ngannou, the former UFC heavyweight champion. His PFL contract is groundbreaking, granting him MMA exclusivity with the PFL, complete freedom for boxing ventures, and significant equity and executive roles within the organization. Taylor Lapillus, another fighter, also chose not to renew his UFC contract and instead inked a multi-fight deal with the PFL. These examples collectively underscore a clear pattern. Fighters are actively exploring and embracing alternatives to the UFC. Several compelling factors are driving this notable exodus of talent from the UFC to the PFL. These reasons often intertwine, creating a powerful incentive for fighters to consider new horizons. Financial considerations are a major catalyst for many fighters making the switch. Shane Burgos explicitly stated that his PFL deal would allow him to earn in a single fight what previously required multiple bouts in the UFC. Francis Ngannou's contract exemplifies the PFL's innovative approach to fighter compensation. Beyond standard fight pay, his deal included equity in the company, executive positions, and the unique freedom to pursue cross-discipline boxing matches. The PFL's tournament format offers a clear and attractive financial pathway. Fighters compete in a regular season, advance to playoffs, and vie for a substantial championship bonus, often $1 million, providing a defined earning potential for top performers. The PFL's unique season-style format, featuring brackets, playoffs, and significant payouts, stands in stark contrast to the UFC's traditional fight-by-fight matchmaking. This structure was a key draw for Burgos, who appreciated its clarity. Many fighters feel this format offers greater control over their career trajectory. They perceive fewer instances of career stalling issues, such as prolonged rests, unfavorable mismatches, or being sidelined compared to their experiences in the UFC. A sense of frustration with how they were treated in the UFC is another common theme among departing fighters. This includes concerns over matchmaking decisions, contract offers, and limitations on personal branding and sponsorships. Mark Diakise, for instance, expressed a profound sense of relief after transitioning to the PFL. The PFL often provides more flexibility regarding sponsorships and fighter branding, depending on individual contract terms. This autonomy is highly appealing to athletes focused on building their personal brands. For some athletes, the decision to move extends beyond immediate financial gains. It is a strategic career move focused on legacy, maintaining activity, and securing featured opportunities. The PFL's proactive growth, including expansions into Europe and Africa, represents significant untapped potential for fighters. In a dominant UFC landscape, moving to the PFL can offer starring roles rather than mid-card obscurity. This allows fighters to build their profile and legacy more effectively. This ongoing talent migration carries significant implications for both major promotions. The competitive landscape of MMA is undeniably shifting. The departure of established talent signals that the UFC may no longer be universally perceived as the sole viable top destination for elite MMA fighters. This trend could exert pressure on the UFC to reevaluate its contract offers, fighter pay structures, and overall strategies for valuing and retaining its roster. Losing key fighters means the UFC must continuously refresh its talent pool. It also needs to work harder to maintain its perception as the premier organization for elite competition. Gaining fighters from the UFC significantly boosts the PFL's legitimacy and elevates its public profile. The PFL's innovative model, with its season-based tournaments and bonus structure, becomes far more appealing when established fighters choose to sign on. However, the PFL also faces its own set of growing pains. Challenges include building sufficient roster depth across all weight classes, efficiently managing event scheduling, executing successful regional expansions, and ensuring fighters remain engaged and active throughout the season. Despite the PFL's current momentum, several critical challenges and questions remain unanswered. These will shape the future trajectory of both organizations and the sport itself. Can the PFL consistently build compelling fight cards across all weight classes and regions, matching or rivaling the UFC's extensive roster depth and global reach is a monumental task? While fighters are leaving the UFC for the PFL, can the PFL retain them long-term? Potential issues like scaling challenges, mismatches, or promotional difficulties could impact fighter satisfaction and loyalty. The UFC brand is globally recognized and deeply entrenched in sports culture. Will fighters who move to the PFL feel they are stepping down in terms of prestige, or is the narrative around the PFL's standing truly shifting? For fighters, leaving the UFC inherently carries risks. These include potentially less exposure in certain markets, uncertainty in future matchups, and the possibility of instability if the newer promotion encounters significant setbacks. The PFL must skillfully balance its identity as a fighter-friendly alternative with its ambition to become a major global competitor. Achieving this requires robust business rigor, effective marketing, and consistent delivery on its promises. This significant movement of fighters suggests that MMA is entering a more mature and diversified phase. It is no longer simply UFC versus everyone else, but rather a landscape with multiple viable platforms where fighters can make strategic career choices. Fighters are increasingly thinking in terms of career portfolios rather than solely aiming for the biggest cage. They are asking where they can best maximize their earnings, visibility, legacy, and personal brand. This shift compels promoters to innovate across the board. Whether it involves contract structures, event formats, fighter compensation, or global expansion, the PFL's model represents one significant experiment in this evolving environment. Ultimately, fans stand to benefit from increased competition between promotions. This could lead to more venues, a wider array of matchups, and potentially more creative and engaging fight formats. Crucially, this dynamic could elevate the fighter's position in negotiations. More leverage, more options, and greater power for athletes could become a lasting outcome of this competitive landscape. Several key developments will be crucial to watch as this narrative unfolds. These will determine the long-term impact of the current fighter migration. Will the PFL continue to sign more big names from the UFC or other top promotions, further expanding its global footprint? This sustained growth is vital for its long-term viability. How will the UFC respond to this challenge? Will it revise its contract terms, fighter pay, and roster strategy to better retain its talent and prevent further departures? Will fighters who have moved truly flourish within the PFL's format, or will issues like matchmaking, inactivity, or promotional challenges hinder their progress and satisfaction? How will fan perception evolve over time? Will the PFL eventually be seen as a destination on par with the UFC, or will it remain primarily an alternative option? Finally, what happens in terms of cross-promotion, tournament structures, and athlete mobility? Francis Ngannou's hybrid MMA and boxing deal hints at a future with much greater flexibility for athletes. The migration of fighters from the UFC to the PFL is far more than just one promotion losing talent. It signals a profound shift in MMA's ecosystem, one where fighters are actively demanding more control, better pay, clearer career paths, and alternative models for their professional lives. While the UFC remains a dominant force, the PFL's rise means fighters now possess genuine choice. For fans, this translates into more compelling storylines, increased movement within the sport, and potentially more dynamic matchups. For the sport as a whole, this competitive environment could lead to better opportunities for athletes and a more robust, competitive landscape overall. We are still in the early stages of this transition, but the big fight is clearly not just inside the cage. It is unfolding across the entire business of mixed martial arts. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more updates.